In 1954, the American artist Jasper Johns took the stars and stripes and made a picture called Flag. To devotees of abstract expressionism, the dominant style of the time, it seemed unaccountably flippant. To others, just baffling. But Johns was the last man to settle for mere teasing. Photographs from then till now show an earnest, anxious face. And beneath the wit in Jasper Johns' paintings, there is usually a note of urgency to be found. Johns had a strong, uncompromising streak. Shortly before he started on Flag, this had moved him to destroy almost all of his earlier work. Flag and the pictures that followed it were part of a conscious new start. Johns makes us look hard at his subject. It's as if we were seeing a flag for the first time, seeing it and questioning its significance. For his subjects, Johns now deliberately chose items one could find every day in the real world, things that had a symbolic role that was more or less taken for granted. Flags, targets, and series of letters and numbers. In aesthetic terms, these objects were invisible. Johns therefore sets out to make every square inch of the image of the flag he shows us as distracting and as visually seductive as possible. Over a collage of strips of newsprint, his colors, oils from a tube, are applied in a solution of melted beeswax, a painting technique called encaustic. This mixture dries quickly, leaving an uneven, translucent surface which preserves the marks of brushstrokes. The result is an image of great interest and beauty. Johns uses the same technique for much of his work during the next few years. But it is with his deceptively obvious titles that Johns makes us do more than merely look. By undermining our assumptions, he also makes us think, and then think again. By calling this painting Flag, Johns poses the question, if not a real flag, is this then a copy of one? Or is it rather the abstract notion of a flag? We face a similar question with Map, painted in 1961. The subject had an obvious appeal to Johns, and it was one he returned to several times. But the image here is very different from that in Flag. During the course of the later 1950s, Johns gradually allowed back into his work the quirky, personal, and emotional elements he had earlier tried to exclude. This development culminated in a series of works painted directly in oils, using bold splashes of color and stenciled lettering. Here we can make out the name of the state, Colorado. In other paintings of this type, what we read in the labels undermines what we see. Map is a gentler version of the attempt to deceive our trust in the picture as a coherent system of information. But while Johns follows some of the principles of map-making, he deliberately ignores others, for example in using blue for areas of land as well as sea. Although we can see the names of states easily enough, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, the labels themselves perversely rebel against their traditional role. They vary in size and color. They are smudged or repainted. In the end, the strong character of the picture as a lively pattern distracts our attention from trying to read the map. We are drawn away from decoding the image to simply enjoying it. The same thing happens with Flag, although here the pleasure is of another kind. The encaustic surface of the painting is intriguing. It invites the touch. But it does not seduce the eye in the way that Map does. The colors of Flag are bold and simple and severely symbolic. They're a long way from the pretty yellows, pinks, and blues of Map. But the concern with pattern and with levels of meaning is the same. And pattern was to dominate Johns' work during the following 2 decades, especially during the 1970s. But it no longer arises from the subject suggested by the title. It is rather something Johns imposes on the picture. The cross-hatched pattern in this painting from 1981 was seen by Johns painted on a car he encountered on the highway. The title, Between the Clock and the Bed, alludes to a self-portrait painted 40 years earlier by the Norwegian artist Edvard Munch. This picture shows Munch forlorn in old age. He is standing by a clock, the symbol of passing time and so of life, in the doorway leading from his studio to his bedroom. To his right, we can see the bed itself, the symbol of sleep and death. The clearest visible connection between Munch's painting and that produced later by Johns is the pattern on Munch's bedspread at the right of his picture. But this is symbolic of a far deeper connection Johns saw between the work and lives of the two artists. In Johns' painting, the cross-hatched pattern has taken over. The painting is divided into 3 panels. These differ in background color, but they are united by the pattern of short cross-hatched strokes that runs across them. The Johns picture has a very strong decorative element. The pattern, seen originally in Munch's picture, has become very much more complex in line and more refined in color in the Johns painting. The red and blue seen in Munch's picture are bold and simple, like the colors Johns uses in Flag, but these are superficial distinctions. Beneath lies Johns' sense of deep connection with Munch's work, and with his personality and personal history too. In the next few years, Munch's work was to provide Johns with other starting points for paintings related to the theme of the artist and his work. Some critics didn't like Johns' increasing insistence on subjects of a mostly personal significance. Others just didn't like his use of cross-hatched pattern in so many of his works. To begin with, only a few saw the important connections between Johns' early and late paintings. The pattern of short diagonal strokes sets up the same continuous visual stimulus across the surface of the picture as does the network of labels in Map, or the lumpy surface contour of the encaustic in Flag. In Flag, Johns directs our attention to the details of surface, the random pattern of blobs and drips, and the presence of many different layers. But he constantly makes us refocus to take in the whole and see beneath or behind these details. And then, in his use of titles, ironic, evocative, or elusive, he hints at further meanings. In the 3 decades since painting Flag, Johns has stated and restated his belief in the fundamental complexity and subtlety of things. In his subject matter, he has moved from the impersonal to the personal. In his approach, from rational to emotional. And in his tone, from witty to somber. Johns' work even defies the logic of art history in seeming less rather than more easy to understand as time goes on. Flag has now become a symbol as ambiguous in the world of art as its subject, the symbol of America, is in the world of politics.